It's Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm Angela Yee, and how exciting. Schele Williams is here with me.
Hey.
Listen, we were just, before this interview even started, having a lot of conversations about Broadway, and I was telling you I took my mom to see Aida twice, and you were in it. You did the whole run with Toni Braxton.
I did the whole run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Toni, Heather, Deborah Cox.
Wow.
The whole run, yeah.
And now, so wait, Aida is coming back too, right?
Aida is coming back, yes.
That's amazing.
And I'm directing that revival.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Now, that's a full circle moment, right?
It is.
So talk to me about just like how, because I know we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but since we were already off camera mentioning that,
yes,
talk to me about how exciting that was to get that call and what it was like when you were actually in the Broadway play.
It was transformational to get that call, because I had been thinking about that story ever since I did it. When I did the show, right when I finished Aida is when I became a director, because I had gone through a show that was about enslaved people, where the leading woman is a black, a Nubian princess. And we didn't have the conversations about blackness, about African culture, both Egyptian and Nubian, in the ways that I had wished. And I came out of that production thinking, I want to become the person behind the table so I can begin to shift these narratives and have the conversations that are entrenching the theater that we're making in our history. And so I got the privilege a few years ago to be asked by Disney to reimagine a new Aida, and I have entrenched it in African history.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about reimagining something that people are familiar with the story. You're introducing a new audience at the same time for people who aren't, but there are some people who are like very devoted to the original story, but you also have to put your own spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I like to say it is, I have 2 children and I love them both. You can love the old one and love the new one. Like, it's not like you got to pick. You can like them both. And you can, so, I do love when people have such affinity for what was, but can create space for what is now.
Although they do say the younger child usually has it easier because the first child has to go through all the trials and tribulations and get all the punishments, and then you tend to be a little bit more lenient with that.
Well, you ask Sasha if that's true, because I don't know if she'd agree with you.
That's what they say. But yeah, and Broadway in particular is a place that, for myself, I love going to plays, and I love taking my friends. I've taken Jasmine, who's up here sometimes guest hosting. I took her to see her first ever Broadway play. We went to go see Jaja's hair braiding.
Yes.
And then I also took Laura, who manages our coffee shop, and she's on lip service. I took her to go see For Colored Girls when that was on Broadway. But what I don't like is that sometimes those plays come and go so fast.
Yeah.
And I really am always trying to advocate for us to go to the theater more, because I feel like it's such a great experience to go with your friends, to go with your family, to go with your significant other. And that brings me to The Notebook.
Yes.
Because my boyfriend loves The Notebook. And when I told him, I was like, we're going to go see that, on Broadway, he was so excited, which was funny to me because
I love that.
Yeah, because sometimes like you try to bring a guy. I took him to go see Wicked, and he actually enjoyed it. Because for some people this is their first time doing something like that, and I think what play you take them to matters a lot.
Yeah.
So people who are familiar with The Notebook, can you talk about this, because it's a musical on Broadway, and so you're directing The Notebook. This is your directorial Broadway debut, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so we got to get into all of that, because The Notebook is an iconic love story, and I heard they're selling Kleenex in the theater.
Well, I mean, we kind of had to. It was like, we got to give people's sleeves a break. We got to let them at least have a Kleenex. People are passing Kleenex in the aisles. Past people were like, okay, we'll let you have your own box. How about that?
Yeah, so tell me about reimagining The Notebook as a musical on Broadway.
So I was approached about this piece in 2020, and I co-direct it with my dear friend Michael Greif. And Michael called me and said, hey, I'm directing this piece and I'd really love for you to do it with me. And it was surprising, because directors don't often co-direct together. And certainly he's a very experienced director. But he said, we're telling this piece in a different kind of way. And we are imagining a world in which the Alleys and Noahs represent many racial many racial cultures. And we want to talk with you about that because it's really important that we're representing them authentically.
Ooh, okay.
And I said, well, let me read it. Let me, hear the music and see what I think. And it just so happened that I was spending my family spent a month in Ohio with my family. This is during COVID. And we drove down to kind of expand our bubble. And my mom has Alzheimer's. And so as I was reading this, I was living it. You know, my dad is Noah. My mom is Allie. They're high school sweethearts. It was just like, it hit me so hard. And because they were imagining the younger Allies as Black, I knew how important it was to expand this narrative to us too, to say this story belongs to us.
Right.
We also know this kind of love. We also know the pain of Alzheimer's. We also have the joy of first love. It was an opportunity to say that we belong inside these stories. And these are all narratives, you know, in theater, in movies. We see movies that never include us, but we feel them so deeply.
Right. But there's still a little bit of a disconnect when we don't see ourselves
of course
in that at all.
I mean, you know, I was explaining to a younger generation, we've got some younger people doing the whiz, and I said, you know, when I grew up, there were no books, you know, children's books that had illustrations with Black kids in them. There were no cartoons. There were no Disney movies with Black princesses.
Right.
I'm like, when The Wiz came out, like, that was everything.
Oh,
right?
And the music was so fire, like, and the acting and everything.
And now, as an adult, I go see movies like The Notebook. I go see movies that I love, and I still don't see myself.
Right.
So to be able to be a part of that change on stage, even if I can't do it on screen, this is my world, right? So to be a part of that and to say, we're not going to ignore your race. What is the challenge in this piece? The challenge is the show took place in the 30s and 40s. Well, now that's a big problem when you're going to introduce Black women into this in mixed couple. So we moved the time period.
Okay.
And we found, instead of it being in the South, we moved it to, we call it like a coastal region. But we actually found some beaches, Carr's Beach, you know, in that Baltimore, that Chesapeake Bay area, that were Black beaches.
Okay.
That had big concerts, that were integrated. And we're like, here's a place where Noah and Allie, that story could be true in 1967.
See, I wasn't certain if you guys are like, we're just going to cast the people who are the best in these roles, or if it was a conscientious decision, like we want to make sure that the younger Allie is a Black woman. So it really was a conscious decision.
It was intentional. It was an intentional expansion of the narrative so that more people could see themselves.
Yeah.
And to also say that the rules of theater are true.
Ooh.
If I sit in a chair and I say this is a car, everybody goes, yeah, it's a car, right?
It's suspension of disbelief.
Yes.
If it's raining in the theater like it is, it's raining.
It's raining. You hear crickets, they're like, oh, they're outside, right? So when we say that we are introducing the rules of this, when one person says Allie and the next person says Allie, and people go, I don't get it. It's like, well, you don't want to get it.
Right.
But if she says Allie and this person says Allie and this person says
And they're
Allie and they're
wearing
all
the same
dressed
color,
alike,
yeah.
it's Allie, everybody.
Right.
You know?
You know what it is.
You know what it is.
And anybody who acts like, oh, this isn't, working for me, then it's kind of like you're not making any effort at all, because there's so many things that we see and witness. I just think about even The Little Mermaid, and people were mad when The Little Mermaid was Black.
Mermaids aren't even
guess
real.
what? It's not even a real thing, guys. And you were okay with pretending this was real when she was white. So you can... and that's what great acting does and a great story does. It lets you get so involved with the story that you can follow it and not have to be like, wait a minute, this doesn't match with this. This isn't really happening. No, you're following what the story is.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, man, that must have been for you. Was it therapeutic to actually get so into, the heart of this play, of The Notebook, while you were going through what you were going through with your mom?
Oh, I cried a lot. I mean, Michael's mom also had dementia. Our leading lady, our older Allie, Marianne Plunkett, her mother had dementia. So we had like lots of conversations that were entrenched and deep in our own versions of it, knowing that none of us have like the defining, like it presents itself in so many ways. But we tried to be very true to the reality of it.
Yeah.
We wanted to be honest in telling this story. And we wanted to be honest in, the love, this incredible love.
Man, that is like
people.
a love story. What do they call it? It's not twin flames, but when two people are like connected and it's like by the universe.
Like soulmates?
Yeah, kind of like soulmates, but there's another phrase that they use. But so, and that feels like that's the kind of love that everybody wants.
Yeah.
and but sometimes we might think it's also so romanticized. Like, can we ever find that? Because there's a lot of flaws, and there were a lot of flaws in there in Noah and Allie's relationship.
100%. I mean, the advice I give to everybody when they're getting married, and it's the advice that I took myself when I got married. I said, you want to marry the person that you want to spend the worst day of your life with. Because everybody wants to be with you when you're winning an Oscar, right? But on the day that you lose your parent, who do you want to be with? And if that's not that person, then you don't walk down that aisle.
That's a great piece of advice.
Because that's the person that's going to be there for you always on your worst day of your life. If this is the person that you want to be with, then that's your person.
And you grew up in Dayton, Ohio?
I did.
Okay, so talk to me about growing up in Dayton, Ohio, because I saw that you saw The Wiz, like you said, when you were 7 years old.
Yes.
And so that was kind of groundbreaking for you. But when did you realize the path that you wanted to take?
So I was always surrounded by theater. I was always surrounded by music. My dad's the drummer for the Ohio Players.
Okay.
And my dad's diamond. So I grew up on the road a lot, going to a lot of concerts, going to a lot of shows. So I always knew that a life in the arts was real. Like, some people grow up and they're like, that's not a real job. I'm like, it's a real job, everybody. Like, so I never considered that I could not pursue my dreams. It was always something that was very real to me. I grew up as a drummer, like my dad.
Oh my gosh,
and that was like
I
was like a little drum prodigy. And it wasn't until my senior year of high school, and I played in the pit of all the shows, and was like, my senior year of high school, I played Dorothy and the Wiz.
And that was it.
And that was it. Girl, it upended my whole life. I then had to, I had scholarships to go to college in music. I turned them down to take a gap year to study theater. And then the following year, I worked at the mall. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, I thought you were going to be something. I really, all my friends left for college, and I'm working at the mall and taking acting classes. And then I got a scholarship to AMDA here in New York.
Okay.
And that's, how it all began. But I really followed my heart.
Wow, so did you look up to Schele E? Because I know when I was growing up, Schele E as a drummer, she made me want to be I need to learn how to play the drums.
That was my nickname in junior high school. Everybody called me Schele E. Yeah.
So you have all these different talents, and I know that comes in handy on Broadway too. So you decided it's time for me to move behind the scenes.
Yes.
As well. Would you ever go back to being in a play?
I can't imagine it.
You can't imagine it?
No,
okay, so you like this seat.
I love it. I love it so much. I love being able to have conversations with actors and creatives. I love auditions because I know how hard it is to come in and audition for someone. And I love giving them their dignity. I love looking at people and especially telling young Black actors it's okay to take up space. The amount of people that cry in my audition room because I just give them permission to be their full selves.
Right.
When they walk in and they think they always have to be in the box that they expect that you want them to be in. But to say, I want you to be as expansive as you want to be. I want to know that your authentic voice is the voice that I want to hear, not the voice that you were trained to be. But your truth is what I value and what I want to see. And just giving them permission to be their full selves. I can't imagine not doing that.
Right. Wow. Listen, and it feels like you're doing an amazing job from the gigs that you've been getting, because it's like you're simultaneously directing 2 plays right now.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It's
I didn't
rough.
even know. Is that a common thing in Broadway?
No,
I
it
didn't
is
think
not.
so.
Yeah, certainly not with musicals. Yeah.
Okay. So talk to me about how you manage that, because I know Broadway is, a few blocks, so I know going from one place to the other, but the amount of switching gears in your head, how is that process?
No one would have planned this. And if it hadn't been for the pandemic, these shows would not have happened the same year.
Right.
Okay. This is really a result of everything shut down and then everything started going again. But when we got the schedule and both shows got theaters, I was like, oh, Jesus. We're in for it. And then it was just about how are we, it was really compartmentalizing.
Right.
I have an amazing assistant, and I would say, okay, on Monday and Wednesdays, I'm going to work on The Notebook. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going to work on The Wiz. And then on Friday, I'm going to work on new projects. So for a while there, I was doing a whiz meeting and then a notebook meeting and then a whiz casting meeting, and I was all over the place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I just got to stay on one show a day.
Okay, that's all right.
So
that's
that was the way that I got
compartmentalizing things. And then you also have 2 daughters, like you said. So how do you deal with all of that in the midst of theater?
Oh my gosh. Well, at some point, I'm always failing somebody, right? So, somebody's like, either somebody's not getting fed or picked up or somebody didn't get cast. Like something's always happening.
Like, Mommy's late.
Yeah. But, every day I have to forgive myself.
Right.
And I just have to try harder and course correct, right? And every day I model for my girls. There's my favorite gospel song is We Fall Down, but I'm like, every day I get back up again, right? And so, in this year that was so challenging, I communicated a lot.
Okay.
Like really was very clear. My husband is amazing. We have a great village. We talked about where I needed to be, what I needed to be, the things that I knew I was going to miss. I was going to miss them in their own musical. I was going to miss some really big moments in their lives. There were, events that happened for the notebook that I was going to miss because I was working on the whiz. Like there were just things that
those are hard priorities.
They're hard priorities. But all I can do is my best every day.
Well, you know what? When you talk about communicating, thinking about something like the notebook, just imagine something like that would never happen today because she wouldn't have missed all those letters because he would have been texting her like, you ain't get mine. He would have been DMing her like, you don't get these notes I'm sending you.
Yeah.
It's a different day and age when people are, trying to write each other letters and communicate that way. You really could lose touch with somebody.
You could lose touch. Yeah.
Nowadays, they have to purposely be ignoring you in order for something like that to happen. What were some things in the notebook that you were like, okay, this has to, because, though there's some iconic moments, what were some things that you felt like had to be in the play no matter what, but were challenging?
The rain.
Okay.
I was like, it's got to rain.
Yeah,
there's no question. And have you seen the show yet?
No, but I'm planning it.
Oh, we rain.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. I mean, raining in
That's the one thing I've
theater
heard about.
Is so exciting because it defies all the rules.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a building. It's not supposed to happen, and it's downpours on stage. Like it is really, really so beautiful. We have water on stage. We have a little lake on stage. Like there are just so many things that make it feel environmental. You feel like you're in this coastal town. You feel like you're in the house. You feel like you're in the nursing home. It's the magic of theater that you suspend belief and then you buy into the magic and you go on that journey. So that was something that we obviously knew we had to have.
I heard it was raining tears in the theater too.
Oh, the end of the play is so, I think, cathartic. There's sadness, especially if you've lived it or there's that kind of thing. There's something that's really beautiful about the communal nature because it's like audible sobs from people all around you, but then you realize you're not alone in your sadness.
Right.
That other people have felt this too. And that's something that was so beautiful about expanding this story to other people. We have many races represented in our show. And to be able to allow other cultures to come in and see themselves and see their belonging inside this story felt necessary and important because that's actually the truth.
Right.
That's the world that we live in. Doing the other is actually creating a false narrative of a very real place that we live. And it's just time to start telling more truths. So us crying together, there's so much laughter. The book is really funny. And the only reason why the crying works is because there is so much laughter. Us laughing together, us crying together, us feeling together feels so necessary after years of COVID and being so separate.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like a big expansiveness of humanity in a small space.
How do you see Broadway changing the way that it has been? Because I remember I used to go to plays and I wouldn't really see any Black people in the theater. Yeah. And I didn't see a lot of plays that maybe I was like interested in going to see. But now I feel like it's a lot more diverse. And of course, there's still always a long way to go. But I always want to make sure that we're figuring out ways to get more of us to go into the theater because I love to see that. Like, I love when I go and I go to a play and I see like a bunch of people that look like me and people like me in the plays. But what do you think about how things have progressed with Broadway plays?
I think that shows in general, there's a distinction between having a Black person on stage and having Black representation. Because Black people performing for audiences has been around for hundreds of years, right? But having someone authentically represent their humanity as a Black person on stage has not. And that's the difference is I think, you know, when I go see a show, there's a lot of shows on Broadway now that have Black people that aren't Black shows. and we know that. And then we go see it and we go like, you don't want to see that to our friends, right? But when we do see something that we're like, that's us, you run and tell that. You tell all your friends.
Right.
Because that's when we want to be able to say to Broadway as a whole, we know ourselves. This is what we like. We want more of this, please, and stop doing that other crap, right? So it is important when you see something that you love that you tell everybody, and everybody comes, and we begin to shift the stories that we tell in the way that we tell them.
Yeah, I mean,
It
MJ
can't
the
just
musical.
all be about our trauma, right?
Yeah, I thought MJ the musical was a great play for people to go see. Like I went to go see that one a couple of times too. So,
Yeah.
and I'm like I said, I'm always trying to make sure we talk about that when we're on this show in particular, when people are coming out, so that they actually feel encouraged to want to do that. Because sometimes I feel like people also don't feel like. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But the fact that so many of my friends have never been, and I'm always like, we live in New York.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes people think it's expensive too, but there are definitely ways to get cheaper tickets.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. Yeah. There's all kinds of deals that come out, and certain months shows are cheaper than others. January, February shows are really cheap. Like there's times when the Broadway's down and you can go get tickets cheaper. You know, there's also like incredible Black artists working behind the scenes.
Yep.
Costume designers, set designers, sound designers, composers, writers. So there can be shows, you know,
To have some flavor.
I saw Appropriate last night, and that was written by a Black writer.
Okay.
But it's a white cast, right? But I saw what he was saying in the piece, and I was like, oh, Brandon, that's so good. You know, like I was so excited to see the piece. I was so excited to support him and his writing. And I was like, you have a really important narrative going on and really important comments about the world in this piece. But you would look at it and say, oh, this is a white show.
Right.
But, you know.
And I also feel like when it comes to actors, for them, the kind of the pinnacle of being able to act is being able to do theater.
Yeah.
Because it is definitely a different type of beast than being on a TV show or in a movie. You know, being on a play, there's no takes. You got to just nail it the way that you do. And if something happens, you got to keep it moving, keep people captivated. And like I was with Erica Alexander, we went to go see The Lion King together.
Yeah.
And she wants to do Broadway so bad. And I think she would be amazing. And
Oh, I can see that,
they did
yeah.
a tour with us afterward, and she got on the stage and she was like, I'm claiming it. I'm going to do Broadway. Like, I'm going to act in a Broadway play. I want to do this so bad.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I'm putting that out there for her if you know.
Yeah.
At some point, I think she would be amazing. But that's what I love, too, like to see for you. Have you done movies or acting in like movies and
I have
TV?
not acted in movies. I've worked
Okay.
on movies behind the scenes as a socio-choreographer.
Okay, because I was going to ask you if it was different, like even for you working behind the scenes,
Yeah.
you know, for movies and theater, like what's the major differences?
It's night and day.
Yeah.
It's completely different. They require different disciplines. When I think about theater performers, it's so athletic. I mean, it really, you know, I was talking to a group of kids yesterday after the matinee of The Wiz, and I was saying, how many of you play sports? 90% of them raise their hands. And I was like, there is nothing more athletic than doing a Broadway show. You have to care about what you eat, how you sleep, how you warm up. You are doing a physical show 8 times a week. They
Right.
saw the matinee. I'm like, there's another show tonight. All that, everything's a muscle. Your singing is a muscle. You're dancing with your muscles. Your body is your instrument. And it has to be conditioned to go for years 8 times a week. It is like whether you have a cold, whether
Right.
you have, you know, when you're slightly injured, you like bandage yourself up, you're going on stage, like you're navigating so much. And there's a live audience there every night. You know, it's different when you're doing film and television. It's so, for me, it's so slow.
You have a lot of long breaks.
Oh.
You do one scene like 20 times, and then you go in the back and you're waiting for your next part. Then everybody breaks for lunch, and it's a long day,
And
but
you're
it's
like,
also a lot
did
of
I
sitting
sit
around.
at that moment? Like, it's just like, And am I standing on my mark? And like, there's just so much that's so specific about it, but it's curated into these tiny little bits, right? And you've got someone that's telling the audience the only thing they can see. You're like, you can only see this. We're zooming in on their eyes, right? In theater, you as an audience have autonomy to look anywhere you want. So every person on that stage has to be telling the story. If you're like third row in the back, you have to be telling the story. And that is like every single set piece. If there's a book on the bookshelf, it has to make sense. And that's the part that I love about directing. It's like there's nothing on that stage that did not get past my eyes. Every earring, would that person be able to afford those earrings?
Right.
Are those shoes at that person? That couch, the upholstery on that couch. Wait, they're sitting in blue. The couch can't be blue because then they'll look like, a gecko. Like everything is thought out. Oh, maybe that couch should have a little rip in it because it's, it's old. They've been living there for a long time. Like every single little thing has to tell the story. And that to me is extraordinary.
That is.
Because the audience could be like, truly, just like while the scene is going on, just start looking around the room.
Oh, that is probably the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful to do that.
I thought you meant not paying attention. You mean
no, but I mean, think about what we've learned about humans is there's so many ways that different people pay attention, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
You've got people with very short attention spans and they want to like look all over the place, but it doesn't mean that they're not absorbing the story as thoroughly as you are.
It's nice that no one has their phone out, though.
No one has their phone out.
Now, that part is nice. Put your
That's
phone
nice.
away for a couple of hours and pay attention and be in the moment.
And connect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your daughters act also, you said,
They do.
Okay, so you see this is going to be their path.
I don't know what they're going to do.
Okay.
Honestly, they enjoy it, and I enjoy it for them because whether you end up acting or not, you know how to take up space. You know how to speak in front of an audience with boldness. You know how to be a partner to someone, how to listen and respond. Like the fundamentals of acting, knowing what your purpose is, having intention. All of those things serve you in life.
Yeah, you can
like it
apply
serves
all
you
of
in a
that.
job interview, right?
Okay.
So no matter what they end up doing in life, the training that acting gives you, I think will serve you everywhere.
Well, on top of all this, you also have a book out.
I do.
If you don't do enough already, okay, Schele, Your Legacy Begins. First Words to Empower, beautifully illustrated.
Thank you.
By the way, so y'all were an amazing team putting this together. But just tell us about this book and why you felt like it was important. I thought immediately about how so many books are being banned, in different states, and how this is really important for people to understand their ancestry. So tell me about Your Legacy Begins.
So my first book was called Your Legacy, A Bold Reclaiming of Our Enslaved History. And this new book is a prequel to that book. Mm-hmm. But that first book, Your Legacy, was my way of talking to my children about their enslaved ancestors. I didn't know how to have that conversation. My husband is Jewish, and every year at Passover, there's a whole ritual talking about their Jewish enslavement, right? And I was like, at some point, I need to tell them about their enslaved history, and I didn't know how to do it. And then when I started looking for resources, nothing was giving me comfort, right?
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about my way in, doing a lot more research, and I had so much shame around the way that I was taught about our enslaved ancestors.
Because you were taught in school.
I was taught in school by strangers
Mm-hmm.
who did not look like me. And I was, one of two black kids in the class. So then everybody looks at us when they see people in chains in the history book. And it was so awful. And I did not want that for my girls. And when I started doing the research, I was surprised at things that I had never considered. The first line of my book is, Your story begins in Africa. Mm-hmm. And the framing of that is I wanted to teach our children about who they were and not what happened to them.
Right. The pride in the ancestors and where you're from.
Yes. Them speaking their native languages, them growing kingdoms, right? And then when they came to America, that they brought that brilliance with them, that they created so much in this country with their ingenuity, their dignity. They learned different languages. Although they were prohibited from a formal education, they created a language, right? They were separated by all the languages they spoke, so they couldn't communicate, and they created pidgin. They created music that connected them. You know, all of these acts of defiance that led to such bravery. All of the things that they invented but were never allowed to put their names on, get patents for. You know, I wanted our children to know that they have a legacy of genius, and that genius is passed down to them. The words that I use in the book are, you know, brilliance, ingenuity, grace, dignity. You know, I use a series of words that describe the characters of our ancestors. And so in my new book, Your Legacy Begins, this book does not deal with enslavement at all, but only about these incredible words that have been passed down, these traits that are a gift to our children as a part of who they are and who they will be and their great purpose in this world.
Man, I do not know how you do it all. But I just want to say it seems like you're doing it all to an amazing, exceptional level. So I just want to make sure, and I know that like you've been getting your accolades, but they are well-deserved. I feel like this is just your time.
Thank you, Angela.
I mean, it's been your time, but just to see everything that you've been accomplishing, you know, these are like huge, huge deals. I mean, The Notebook, The Wiz, Aida, sometimes you got to just sit back and think like,
thank you, Jesus. Yeah, I think that a lot. I do. I feel
but also the
grateful.
work that you put in, you know, is really like you've done a lot of exceptional things before this, but the work that you put in, like we all get to witness and experience it on such a high level. And this is really helping other people, you know, that are coming behind you too. It's such a huge deal. So thank you so much for taking the time to come here. I cannot wait for my Notebook date night.
Yes, you have to call me afterwards.
Yeah, I will. And I'm going to come right back up here and tell everybody, because when I tell you those reviews can be scathing, but I saw the reviews for The Notebook and I saw the New York Times review in particular, and it was amazing. You know, for people, I remember it started off saying something like, often you'll see a play adapted to a movie, but the other way around can be terrible. And this definitely lived beyond expectations. And so I just want to encourage everybody to check it out, because I know I am. I feel really good about it. And I also went and looked at different clips online, and you know me, I'm doing my research at all times. So I'm excited to go see it. The only reason I haven't seen it yet is because we were trying to coordinate schedules, because my boyfriend is like, I'm coming to see it with you. Yes. And so I couldn't go with one of my friends, and that was the deal.
And you've come see The Wiz.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a given. We already have dates, I think, on the calendar up here. So.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, you have to call me afterwards.
Yeah, so I'm excited, and I'm glad to see you, the person that is directing. So thank you for coming.